We get a feel for us, we get a feel for you. Why don't you tell us why you want to do this? And, what are your thought process, and what do you think you can do better for the wildlife?
Sure. My wife and I recently moved to Carson City in April. Now, we moved here in April, and really we wanted to look at ways that we could be involved in the community. And I'm very interested in hunting and fishing and wildlife, and we thought that would be a good opportunity for me to give something back to the community and, maybe use some of the skills that I have developed over the years to give back and hopefully benefit the community.
All right, very good. Well, we each get to ask a couple questions here. And we may go over that because you're the only applicant here, so we're going to probably have a little more discussion maybe. But the question I have is, give me your thoughts on what you believe to be the jurisdictional split between what wildlife comes under the jurisdiction of Carson City, comes under the jurisdiction of the state, and comes under the jurisdiction of the feds.
Well, that's an interesting question.
And I think I know the answer, but I really, go ahead.
Well, I think in Nevada, there's our own specific needs as far as wildlife conservation goes. And loosely, I think, the federal government should, have certain laws in place that, like endangered species and so forth, that we have to follow. But Nevada needs to really have our own policies and our own laws with regard to wildlife, because it is definitely specific to our state. We have unique species and unique environment here in Nevada that is extremely unique from even our neighboring states like California or Oregon or Utah. And then within that, with Carson City, I think that the policies and needs that we have with wildlife conservation are definitely impact the rest of the state. So they have to be interwoven with what policies the state has, and really work together with the rest of the state in order to develop those policies.
And one of the things that at least I've run into here is, deer in our community are really under the jurisdiction of the state government. I mean, we don't own the deer, state does. And when it comes to wild horses, part of them are owned by the state, part of them are owned by BLM, depending on the nature of them. So, when we say manage wildlife, sometimes I wonder exactly what that leaves us at the local jurisdiction to exactly do. That's why I asked the question. So it's one of those things that, we'll see where it goes.
That's one of the things I love about living here now. We have deer on our street, and it's a unique situation, but it's something that...
Well, you may get different views on that one, because a lot of people would love the deer, a lot of people feed the deer, and a lot of people don't like them. And I just finished my landscaping, so I'll tell you, I'm rapidly going on to one side that says, deer, move along and go eat something else, man. Anyway.
They like my neighbor's landscaping, not mine, so I have probably a different perspective of that.
Okay, all right. Who's next? Karen.
Hi, and welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Since one of your duties is to be on this committee would be to make recommendations to NDOW, I just would like your thoughts on reintroducing wolves into our environment, which used to be here. Don't choke, Brad. Or increasing tag limits, for deer, since the deer live in my ward and I'm the one that hears about them. So I'm just wondering what your thought process is with regards to that.
Well, with regard to the wolves, that's a real hot topic, and I have a lot of friends up in Washington State that are absolutely against the wolves being reintroduced because it's impacted their livestock. I think it's something that I would have to have an open mind looking at both sides. I'm not an expert on that subject, but it definitely would have to listen to what the people in Nevada would want from that regard, and not just certain landowners, but really what the populace would like as far as that goes. As far as the deer go, I think that's something that really needs to be looked at on an individual basis in different areas. And I don't know, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do know there's not very many tags in this area, and it's been almost impossible over the years to ever draw a tag here. And I didn't realize how many deer there really were. So I definitely think that's something that should be looked at, because there isn't very many tags, and it's real tough to get a tag here.
No offense to the mascot of the University of Nevada, Reno, but I'm not a fan of wolves, and in fact, we don't need to reintroduce them. They're already here in the state, because I've seen them. My question for you, similar to Karen's, is more theoretical. At the state level, tags for herd management, specifically to the elk herd, the quotas have been changed based on a formula of success rate times the herd. But they haven't addressed how people hunt, which seems to be a better solution. So just issuing more tags and hoping that more people get lucky hasn't been successful. What are your thoughts on limiting the ability for hunters to just drive off-road vehicles wherever they want in order to hunt, rather than getting off of vehicles and going out and actually hunting?
Sorry. As far as the off-road vehicles, it's not my favorite thing in the world at all. I like to hike and become, part of the getting into the mountains and doing the hiking. There's people that, we want to be able to have access to hunting that can't do that, and so maybe there could be some special tags for that. But I don't really, I don't like the broader access of the off-road vehicles, and I think they're going into areas that shouldn't be accessed, and they're making their own roads, and I don't agree with that at all. As far as the elk piece goes, I feel really strongly about that as well. I've been elk hunting a lot in the last couple of years, and I had a cow tag and a bull tag this year. And the cow tag, it's getting easier and easier to get one, and it's getting harder and harder to harvest because of the way they're learning how the hunters hunt. And by issuing a lot of these rifle tags during the deer season, the elk are just being run, and it is becoming real difficult to hunt. So I really think we need to address how those tags are being issued and do a better job in maintaining the herd by maybe limiting the scope of the tags or when the tags are available for the hunts.
Okay, let's see, I'm going to reword mine. Half and half of each of those. So, what criteria do you think should be used to determine how the Wildlife Committee would make recommendations for the quotas of big game, birds, and fish to endow? What type of criteria should be used?
Well, number one, we want to maintain the herds and the resource that we have. So we definitely don't want to put quotas in place that are going to jeopardize the species or the herds. On top of that, I like the bonus tag system that we have. I think it's successful, and I think it's fair. The information is the biggest part as far as for me with maintaining those quotas, is just having good information and making sure we're getting good information and counts on the animals, because just like with anything, if those numbers aren't good, it's hard to make good recommendations.
Well, I'm the last guy there, and everybody else has questions. This is often the way it occurs, so my questions have been taken, 2 of them. So I'll ask you, how, I notice your degree is in marketing and your background is with UPS. How would you utilize that in being on this committee? Since that's kind of off-the-wall question, but you might have some ideas about how you could utilize your background.
Sure. Well, the one at UPS, I've learned over the years, and I'm on my 28th year at UPS, is attention to detail and being particular with details and attending meetings on time, being there, doing what I say. Also, as far as a marketing standpoint, just if there's ways that we can do more outreach to the community, and if I can bring those talents into play on, just reaching out and letting the community know what we're doing and getting more community buy-in, I think those are some things that I could bring to the table.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and I would really like to give back to the community and provide my talents. I think it would be fun, and I really would enjoy learning more about what the advisory board does, and I read a lot of the minutes from some of the previous meetings, and there's definitely some topics that I don't know very much about that I would have to educate myself on, and I'd be absolutely willing to do that.
Good for you, and welcome to Carson City.
Thank you.
Let me ask you before you leave. We had, by the way, the other applicant showed up. What was the thought process moving from Reno to Carson City?
My wife and I really wanted to sort of get out of the Reno and how busy it is, the traffic, the hectic lifestyle there. And I still work in Reno, but my job's real flexible, so I spend most of my time here, and we don't really go into town that much. And the longer that we've been in Carson, the more we like the slower lifestyle and not as much traffic and closer to nature. We love, I know the deer thing, everyone doesn't love that, but I'm enjoying that, and just seeing that wildlife around here, and the people are friendly, and it's a nice small town community. I'm enjoying it.
Okay, thank you You're welcome to sit here while we take a seat in the audience there, because we'll interview Stewart next year. Stephen Stewart. Good afternoon, Mr. Stewart. How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Boy,
I am
you're on duty.
sorry for my tardiness, but
Don't worry about it. Sit down. Have a seat. Sit down. Have a
thank you,
seat.
sir.
You've applied for the sportsman, rancher, or that position on the Wildlife Commission?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We've all looked at the application, and as I told Darren, who's also applied, we all asked the similar questions of each of the applicants, and then we kind of have to make a hard decision. So, just to get us started off, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and I can see kind of what your occupation is, but, why you want to do this, and, any experience you've got in either the sportsman or the ranching or the hunting area.
Okay. First off, my name's Kirk Stewart. I know it says Stephen on the application, but I do go by Kirk. I've been a lifelong guy that's hunted, fished. I take photographs of wildlife. I spend a lot of time chasing that big buck around town, getting pictures of him, especially when he hangs out at the Capitol building. I have grandkids. I take them all fishing and hunting. I'm just getting the youngest granddaughter involved in shooting sports. Hopefully I can get her into the whole shooting era. She's not real crazy about it yet, but I'm still working on it. I do spend a lot of time out in the middle of nowhere, as much as I can with work and everything else. I probably spend about 80 to 90 days a year out in the middle of nowhere doing something, either taking pictures of something, out hunting, out just goofing off in the desert. So I do spend a lot of time out in the desert. And hunting has always been a huge passion for me. And it's not always necessarily taking a rifle. Not only I rifle hunt, I archery hunt, I muzzleloader hunt, I hunt with a camera, so.
Well, we've got those, her husband hunts a lot with a camera.
It's a lot of fun.
This guy is out, spends time all around the world hunting, right? Yeah. And I don't know, John and Karen, I don't know, I'm pretty well done with my hunting days.
Actually, my dream hunt is to go to Africa. They do what's called an eco hunt, and you pay to dart a rhino or an elephant so that the scientists can do all their thing, and then you get to watch it wake up and run away. That's just always one of those things that I wanted to do. So.
I'm sure you're probably going to get a question on that. You've been to Africa. So. All right. You're on the east side.
Yeah, he keeps
Well, you can't shoot. There's not many places you can shoot rhinos.
The question I have for you, and it's the same one I've asked Kurt, was tell me what you know about the jurisdictional dividing lines of who owns and who has responsibility for which types of animals between local government, state, and federal folks.
Federal folks normally manage the federal wildlife areas. They do more of the scientific type stuff for avionic flu, that type of thing. The state controls basically all the wildlife, deer, elk, that kind of stuff. Their boundaries are huge. I talked with some of the game wardens, and it's just crazy what their boundaries are. The wild horse thing is a mess right now.
I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on that, so don't worry about it.
Well, I just
know
sat through a meeting last week about the wild horses, and that was just crazy. But back to, Fish and Game would be the ones dealing with all the normal wildlife. I don't think they have anything to do with horses anymore. I know they deal with mainly enforcement and preservation of our wildlife.
So if somebody asked you to, Wildlife Commission, to adopt regulations concerning deer, what would you tell them?
Concerning deer?
In an urban environment, place Carson City.
Our deer here. We need to work on our deer here.
Because it occurs to me that, even though the deer are here, they're not owned by us.
No, they're owned by the state.
Yeah, so sometimes I wonder about the ability of the city, even though, some would say that we don't want them here, others want them here. What's our real jurisdictional ability to deal with that issue?
I think that would be up to the Wildlife Commission itself and Fish and Game to guide us in whatever that ordinance needed to be, because they are owned by the state. It's not really at the city level.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's Kurt, right? K-U-R?
Yeah. K-I-R-K.
Kirk. Oh, Kirk. Okay.
Yep, just like Captain Kirk.
Okay.
But I'm not that high on the food chain.
All right. John, we started down there, so you want to start?
Yes, give us a little more about your vocational background and your education, and tell me how that would apply to what you're hoping to be able to do on our commission.
Education-wise, I got some college. I don't have a degree. I'm not one of those guys. I am in law enforcement, been in law enforcement for 18 years, I think. Prior to that, I was in the fire service for 10 years, 9 years. So in my current position, I work at the Capitol, at the State Capitol building. So I talk to everybody that comes in just about. So talking to people's really not a big problem. And my experiences all goes back to hunting and fishing stuff, so.
So how would you apply that to this role?
I think I have a good grasp on what at least the wildlife in our area are doing, and how maybe we could give some ideas to the state to manage the deer population a little better, get some more deer out there, only because I am out there so much. Kind of stuck on the rest of it.
Don't worry. There's no right or wrong answer.
Oh, sweet. Right or wrong answers are just, that kills the whole game if you got to answer it right.
Okay, good afternoon.
How are you?
Good, thank you. So what criteria do you think should be used to help form the recommendations on quotas of big game, birds, and fish to end out?
The quotas? Okay. I think they need to start counting a whole lot sooner than what they do to establish what we have out running around out there to begin with. I've read some of their surveys, read quite a few of their surveys actually, especially on the bird counts, and it seems that they're a little low sometimes, and then other areas it seems kind of high to me, because I'm not seeing the wildlife that they're saying is out there. I'm sure it's there. I'm probably just missing it because they're doing it with a helicopter. But I think if we could get them to start at the survey, and then we could work from those numbers and try to come up with some, maybe a lower number sometimes than what they actually want to put out. Because I know for like deer, they put out a whole lot more tags than what they really want harvested. I'd like to see some closer numbers on those.
Hey, Kirk.
Hey.
I also have a quota question for you. As you probably already know, the way the quotas are set are by success rate and the surveys to determine the size of the herd. And the way they've been setting the quotas has been to increase the number of tags and hope that the success rate either goes up or maintains what they're estimating it to be. And that, in my opinion, has not been successful. And part of the problem has been the accessibility of a lot of the federal lands by off-road vehicles, where people aren't actually getting out off of off-road vehicles and hunting. They're just driving all over the place and hoping to see something and then jumping off their off-road vehicle and taking a shot. So I'd like to see what your thoughts are. This is particularly applicable to the elk herds in Nevada. I'd like to know your thoughts on access for off-road vehicles, and if there is a better way for herd management other than just hoping that the success rate stays static and just increasing the number of tags, because I'm out there every year and I haven't seen that working. What you have is a lot of people out there and not a lot of success. And then we also have overlapping seasons now where you have chukar deer and elk all open at the same time, all with their own subsets of hunters hunting the same areas. There has to be a better way to direct all that traffic.
I would hope there would be. As far as off-road vehicles go, there's lots of roads out there, and I think that at the state level and even the federal level, trying to establish more wilderness areas is probably hurting us who want to get out and ride ATVs and stuff. I know up in the northern area, like up in the Denial Wilderness, it's still listed, at least the last time I looked, it was listed as a wilderness study area, and it was pretty much all closed off, and it's 115,000 acres. I think some of those areas could still remain open and not damage a lot of the wildlife or wildlife foods. And I think that could probably get some more people out there. But as long as everybody's able to drive these roads, we're going to have road hunters. I don't think that's ever going to stop.
I'm not so concerned with the roads and the two tracks. It's the quads and the other off-road vehicles that are just driving anywhere, just cross-country, creating their own tracks.
And that happens all the time. And I don't know if there's a way to actually stop that from ever happening, short of having more wardens out in the field or having BLM or Forest Service have more officers out in the field. I don't think we're ever going to stop that. I've been Charbidge Wilderness. I've seen people in quads up there. And it happens everywhere, unfortunately. So I don't know if there's going to ever be a solution to that one. Unfortunately, I think education's the only way to go, and that's if people want to listen. we could probably go out there and talk every day to somebody that's riding a quad, and they're going to say, oh yeah, sure, we won't go out there. 2 days later, we'll find them out there, because that's what people are going to do. As far as the tags that they give out, I think in some areas they give out way too many. And some of their seasons are crazy the way they overlap. I've ran into checker hunters, rifle hunting too. They're everywhere. They do need to spread those out. I'm not sure if they ever will, but I would like to see them spread out a little bit more so that we don't have the overlaps that we currently have.
Hi, Kirk.
Hello.
Since one of your duties on this committee would be to make recommendations to NDOW, I'd just like to know your thoughts about bringing wolves back into our area to kind of create more of a balance in our wildlife populations.
That's not a trick question.
No.
I'm not a fan of the wolf. Never have been. Excuse me. I've seen what's happened in Montana and Wyoming and some of the other states. And we have had 3 wolf sightings in northern Elko County. We've also had 4 moose sightings, a mom and calf, last year. And partly that is because of the wolf. The wolf has started to push elk, deer, antelope, moose out of Wyoming, Montana, Canada, Oregon into our state. I think if we have wolves come back in our state and there's any kind of population, we're going to see the same kind of decrease as the rest of the states have seen. And not only that, but the ranchers are going to start seeing a decrease in livestock, which is going to cost lots of money. Currently, there's way too many wolves running around right now that probably could be hunted. And I think if our state was going to allow that to happen, they should put a very strict management law on them and a hunting season.
Kirk, anything you want to add in conclusion?
No, I'm good, I think.
Well, it occurs to me listening to both applicants here that there are a lot of different organizations, boards and commissions at the state level, but it occurs to me that one of the hottest ones is the Wildlife Board. I mean, I don't know how people sit on that and go home and rest. Let's put it like that. It's pretty dangerous. I'm not dangerous. There's a lot of different viewpoints that come to it. So
It's pretty contested.
Contested is a good word.
There's a lot of people on both sides that would like to see a lot of hunting stopped, and there's a lot of people that want to see more hunting, so.
And I think at the end of the day, what that says is, we just want to bring some science to the issue and some cooler heads and make some decisions based upon, just me, based upon, looking at everything and trying to make the right decision without coming in with necessarily a foregone opinion, but anyway. We want to thank you for applying here today. Well, we now have to do the hard job and make a pick between 2 great applicants, and it's never easy. So, but we want to thank you for doing that, and it's pretty. Your idea about going and doing a hunt with what'd you call it? Where you in Africa? What kind of hunt is that?
It's an eco hunt.
Eco hunt. Gonna do that, Brad?
Rhino darting.
Rhino darting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only downside to it is when it wakes up, probably going to be mad. It's probably going to look for the person that darted it. I hope so. At least as long as I can outrun the pH, I'm good.
All right. You're welcome to sit there or back in the audience, whatever. Now we have to make our decision, and we'll go on. And also, thanks for keeping us safe down at the Capitol.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. It's one of those hard ones. Who wants to start?
Well, I want to ask a question. How are we spelling rhino here?
Oh, good question. All right.
Well, I'll start. This has never happened before. I came out with both candidates tied.
Yeah, me too, so I don't.
Me too.
Oh, no. Okay. Passing it down to that end.
Well, so then we start parsing it out as to what somebody can or can't bring. So you can look at Kirk and say he's familiar with the hunting areas, fish, because he's got a lot of experience locally here. And then you've got potentially Darren, who's fresh to the ideas. So do you want one with more local experience with the hunting grounds? Again, I'm just looking for ways to take two great candidates and figure out which one will bring a greater value to the Board of Management,
Yeah,
which one.
I don't think it's a matter of being fresh. I think if you live in Reno or you live in Carson, you're hunting the same areas in the state.
Except for Darren didn't mention that okay. Kirk said he spent 80 hours or 90 hours every days out there, so that's what I meant by, I don't know, they're great candidates.
I don't think we've ever done a coin toss.
Well, there was a coin toss in the election
Virginia.
this morning. I saw in Virginia. Yeah, I'm going to start it off. They are both great candidates. I'm going to go with Darren. I like the fresh eyes for Carson City. We often take people because we know them, because Carson City is a small town, and we tend to lean that way on some of them. But in this one, I like the fresh eyes for this particular commission.
Well, I can live with that too. I'm also impressed with Kirk's answers to several of the questions. So I guess, if I flip a coin, it's not what I flip a coin, but I could go down. They're both equally qualified, but I think on balance I could support Kirk for this job. So that's me. So that's 1-1. Who wants to weigh in?
Well, I liked Kirk's answer to my wolf question. He answered it well, and so that just sways me just a little bit more.
The wolf question.
Yes.
That's going to go down in history.
Well, I'm going to make Lori decide.
Oh. Getting off the hook here.
Well, you can always go with
Okay,
Darren.
I'm going to
Brad's
go
gotta
with
decide.
Kirk.
I'll go with Darren.
I'm going to go with Kirk. Okay.
All right.
Well, you can do it that way, or we can just do it by acclamation. It's not.
All right.
They're both great.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to appoint Kirk to a 3-year term ending July 21st to the Advisory Board to Manage Wildlife. So on that motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried.
I'd like to have Darren come back, though. He really obviously
Can I
wants
point
to.
out one quick thing, Mr. Mayor? So you've actually got, as of July 31st, you're going to have 3 vacancies. One of them is currently in his 7th term. So I don't know, I haven't spoken with him. I don't know if his intent would be to reapply or not, but Darren would certainly have another opportunity in July.
And then since we've already interviewed him, we could use the other portion of the
Certainly.
policy.
That would be the pleasure
to have
of the
an
board.
appointment.
Right. Which would be
Right. Okay. So you might be joining us after all.
That's right.
Yeah. These are tough decisions, and so we're trying to make everybody, give everybody a chance to serve, and so we'll see what happens in June or July. Keep us in mind, if you could, and then we'll go from there, okay? But on behalf of the board and your community, thanks for both of you for your interest in serving your community. You're both very articulate individuals, okay? Thank you very much. All right. Let's go to the senior center. Courtney, you going to do this? You got some help there, I see. Rebranding?
You'll learn more than you ever wanted to know.
This is a presentation only. Everybody but seniors has to leave.
Nobody's leaving?
Quite the contrary. That's a good lead-in of why we're here. So Courtney Warner from the Carson City Senior Center, and I'm joined by Renee Plain from In Plain Sight Marketing. And I also have Mike Pavlakis, who's our governing board director here as well. And so I wanted to use this opportunity to present our new logos and also give you a little bit of history of what we've accomplished in the last year to get to this point where we have the new logo and also where we are headed. So since I joined about 2.5 years ago, I think that the senior center was the best kept secret in town. People knew about it if they knew about it, and if they didn't, they had no clue. And that is problematic when you're trying to serve the community, and especially when we have more and more retirees coming into Carson and more individuals turning 60 that might need our services or benefit from our programs. And so as we were trying to develop an opportunity to promote community awareness of our organization, we lacked kind of that foundation, which is really a logo and an identity. And so we started this process about a year ago. We brought on Renee's team and to help us with asking the community, what are the perceptions of the senior center, and what do our seniors and also the younger community that doesn't use the senior center, what do they think of the senior center, what could they get out of it, and really help shape our identity so that we are matching our services, our program, with what the community wants. So where we started is we had a survey done last winter, spring. We had about 400 total participants in the survey that included members from the senior center, included Meals on Wheels recipients, and it also included individuals that have never participated with the senior center. That was a strong goal because we wanted that perception as well. We didn't want to be patted on the back. We really wanted that meat of where are we headed. So from that survey, we got a lot of information of perception and activities, programs, gaps, and more information to help us form our future. We had 3 focus groups out of the survey respondents. One was participants of the senior center. We had a group that were non-participants of the senior center. And then we also did a really special focus group for the Hispanic community because we recognize that that's an opportunity for us to expand in and really develop our programs to meet that part of our community. So the outcomes from all of those efforts is some really good information for us to help with our perception. How does the community feel that we're doing in terms of welcoming new faces that are coming into the senior center? How are they getting the information about the senior center, and how can we reach the community? And going into details also of when they walk in the building, what is their perception visually? How's our decor? How's our furniture? How are our staff interacting with new individuals? And got some great information there. A lot of suggestions for future activities, programs, resources, gaps in services, and new partnerships that we're excited to develop. And then, of course, the main goal was also to help us with our identity and our logo. So from there, we got kind of 2 trends, which I thought was commendable, as there's an incredible pride in the community, and there's also a pride in the name senior, because it's always kind of a controversial name, and I really wanted to hit that hard to see, okay, do we need to change our name? Are we having individuals avoid the senior center because it has senior in the name? It's kind of a trendy thing with the industry. Some are going still with seniors, and some are going completely away with that term. I think it was incredibly beneficial to get the results from the community to say, yes, we are proud to be Carson City Senior Center. So we knew we're not changing the name because that was the information that we got from the community, and that's what we wanted to match. So we rolled out some different logo ideas. I'm proud that Renee's team is still sitting with me because I probably was one of the toughest clients she's had. And I'm not a visual person until I see it. So I think that's hard for a designer to work with somebody like me. I'm like, I just want really bright colors, and I want it to be really active, but that's as much information as you're going to get out of me. But I can definitely reject a lot of things as I get into samples. So that was a really fun process, at least for me. I don't know about for her team. And so we rolled out 2 logos, and we went to vote. We had 200 responses for our senior center logo, and we chose kind of the design with it, with the circle of people, is because it's, our organization, we're connecting seniors. We're connecting seniors socially with resources, and we are also serving the public, mostly the senior public, but we're also looking for opportunities to kind of, push that envelope a little bit, but we are serving the public. So that's where we've had the circle of people.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
One of the things that we really picked up from our surveys and from the focus groups is that the senior center is the place where people go to see their friends and to socialize, which was also a big deal with the circle of people, because it shows community, it shows socialization, it shows all of the things, bringing them together. And then we also chose kind of like a logo that has some sort of movement to it, because one of the big responses was we're active, we're moving, we're here, and it also is going to help us try and capture some more of the younger senior population to come in and give it a shot. So.
No, perfect. And then with the color, I'm a color person. I wanted bright colors. I'm not a purple person, but I was outvoted, so we have a little bit of purple in there because I can compromise a little bit in that. And then, of course, we stuck with the name because there was great pride in our name. Now, we did drop the senior citizens part. That's been dropped for quite a while with the organization, so we are the Carson City Senior Center. And so I'm not sure if you got the logo as part of your late material, but I have it here, and I'll show it to you in just a minute. But one piece I wanted to also talk about is our opportunity to co-brand our Meals on Wheels program and give our successful program its own identity. Our Meals on Wheels program currently is serving about 275 clients a day and has grown exponentially since I've been here, and we are projecting to be well over 80,000 meals in our grant fiscal year. And we had an opportunity to join the national Meals on Wheels America movement and have a collective voice with a program that is, of course, our nutrition programs are dependent on Older Americans Act funding, and we need that collective voice and to be able to unify with the 5,000 other Meals on Wheels programs in the nation. So we used it as an opportunity. Meals on Wheels America developed kind of the brand standards and use it as an opportunity for us to co-brand and just be part of the movement. You might have seen commercials lately for Share the Love from Subaru, and then also Let's Do Lunch out of Meals on Wheels America. They're promoting our program, and they're doing that locally by buying and doing advertisements. Now we have a brand that matches that national brand. So our next steps that we're doing is we're just continuing with this framework is leading on to more things to develop the organization and to help. So of course we're in the process of getting our vehicles wrapped, developing that design, because they are our billboards out there serving 275 clients a day. We've got 4 trucks out there 5 days a week. We want them to be our billboards and developing a really strong visual identity there. And we're also working on the interior of our building. Is one of the feedback was the perception when you walk in. And currently when you walk into the senior center, it looks like a senior center. It's got dated furniture, dated decor. Yeah, Laura, you've been there quite a bit. So yeah, we have a tremendous opportunity to really bring that into something that is visually appealing. So when you have somebody brand new and they're trying to see, do we fit, and what's the perception, it's going to be a positive perception. And so I'm really excited about some opportunities that are coming our way to help develop that with just decor and paint and art and having just a purpose and just not kind of a hodgepodge of everything together. And then we're building on new partnerships. We've had a lot of publicity lately with the new logo and everything that Renee's teams have been successfully putting out there, and I have been getting calls from schools and different organizations that want to do neat things with the senior center. So I'm really excited about our ability to connect with the community even further than just the seniors, and thinking outside of the box of new programs, innovative programs that really connect with our program. And then Triad, we launched Triad based on the survey results of needing more information on health and safety. Triad is the partnership between the sheriffs and fire departments. We started it in June. We have anywhere from 120 to 180 seniors that attend each event each month. It's been incredibly successful. We're looking to build in 2018 to develop more workshops, and we're in these monthly programs, we pretty much give our seniors a lot of homework. And so now we're going to be able to provide these workshops to actually get things done. So if we're going to have a workshop on wills and trusts, now actually having representatives come in and get them done, and to have all of the tools available. So now we can say, okay, that one is complete, and we've provided all the tools for the seniors to maximize their benefit of these resources. So we're really excited of all the new partnerships that are coming in through this process. It's been a long year, but I'm incredibly proud of what we've developed, and we'll give you a view of it now if you haven't seen it. Ta-da! So those are the two brands.
There is a little purple. Overwhelming in the surveys that they wanted purple, and that's like a thing.
And the building's purple.
Yeah.
Can I wait till I get painted? Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, I just wanted to see.
That's right. We'll let the public see.
It's very nice, and if I ever get old, I'm going to wear purple.
So Courtney, are you going to incorporate those colors in your interior?
Yes.
Okay.
We are working on an opportunity so that how are we going to design, what's the art? And I don't know if everybody's going to appreciate the neon colors as much as I do. So I might just focus on the vehicles being incredibly bright and obnoxious, but I've warned our drivers that they might be coming, because it also is something, I mean, you look at like the color of the Jack Assist bus, that's lime green. You see that, you recognize that there's a purpose there. And even with the UPS brown. So it is something that has an identity, and I think that is incredibly important for us, because we recognize that the community knows a little bit about us, but we haven't really been in their face enough to say, here's what we do, and here's how we're supporting your neighbors, your parents, your friends, you yourself, and that's our opportunity, and that's what we want to develop.
Well, Courtney, great job on that, and you've been doing a great job since you came here, and I've heard that from several people who use your facility quite a bit. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
I think I ate that logo when I was over at your board meeting when you had those cookies.
You got lots of cookies.
They're all
Thanks for your
very
help.
good, too, let me tell you.
And I welcome all of you to come anytime to have lunch. If you'd like to deliver for Meals on Wheels too, we can make that happen. I think that as much support that we show our seniors, the better. They really appreciate all of those efforts. Thank you.
Well, that reminds me too, congratulations for the outreach to our Hispanic community. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Renee, here's a question for you on colors. Since why are school buses yellow? Okay, I don't either.
But I can tell you, I'm probably
I've been
going
on
to
the
go
school board
look.
for 11 years, never knew.
For caution. Yellow
bright?
caution light, to be careful that kids are, it's a caution.
Yeah, that makes
Exactly.
sense. I'm going to go
Yeah.
look it up for you, though.
Yeah.
It is.
Some school buses are not yellow, but that's okay. That's just fun.
That's why the universal yellow is.
I just,
Why is our fire department yellow?
It has a lot of red.
Don't? Oh, okay, I didn't go there. I like it.
Right. Thanks,
To show, so it can be seen.
it just shows what a great community we have where we can, one, share a new logo and share some stories and stuff like that. And like John, and I think I've told you and your board before, I hear nothing but good things about what you're doing out there, Courtney. I mean, you seem to be everywhere. And I asked you before, but just so everybody knows, we're the reconstruction of the flooring out there, the subfloor, that's all done now?
Everything is open back to the public. I don't think we're finally done in terms of like the paperwork process of it, but in terms of the impact to the seniors, everything is back up and running.
Good, all right. Anything else?
Thank
Anybody?
you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Okay, whoop.
The school bus yellow is a color which was especially formulated for use on school buses in North America in 1939, became known officially as National School Bus Chrome. Color was selected because black lettering on that hue was easiest to see in the semi-darkness of early morning. Thanks, Ronnie.
There you go.
Very educational today.
All right. All right. Hope you're ready to move on?
Ready to get a tattoo?
Don't comment on that, yeah.
I saw you walk in with all those books, boy, they're bigger than you are, so.
DuPont yellow.
All
So
right.
she doesn't trust us not to ask a question.
All right, let's jump to item 22, deal with community development issues. This is a potential ordinance on first reading relating to zoning, amending Title 18 to include tattoo parlors as an allowed use in retail commercial use district. Hope, you're going to take us through this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. This is a request by Jason Meindl, who's a business owner of Jason's Bazaar over on California Street. He's present with us today. He's requested to amend the code to allow a tattoo parlor as a primary use in the retail commercial zoning district. Because of how the code is structured, should you approve this ordinance, a tattoo parlor would also be a primary permitted use in the general commercial, limited industrial, and general industrial zoning districts. Currently, it is a conditional use in the limited industrial zoning districts. I suspect that's a holdover from back when it was sort of a not as mainstream business, and Jason included in his application kind of his read on how that business has evolved to become a mainstream business. I will note that body piercing is currently an allowed use in the retail commercial, and the staff perceives that this is a very similar type use. The Planning Commission considered the request at its meeting of November 29, 2017, and recommended adoption of the ordinance based on the ability to make all three findings in the affirmative. As I mentioned, Jason Meindl's present, and this is his application and his request. Staff is supportive, as is the Planning Commission, and I'm happy I should mention we did run this by the Sheriff's Office as well, and the Sheriff's Office did not have any concerns with the proposed ordinance. And with that, I'll answer questions, Mayor.
Questions of Ms. Sullivan? Anybody? Go.
You may mention, too, on the record that I had asked you to look at permanent makeup, which is also tattooing, and that's currently allowed.
It's in the definition of a beauty parlor, I believe. Sorry, thought I had the mic on. It's in the definition of a beauty parlor is permanent makeup. So where we would allow a beauty parlor, they could pursue permanent makeup.
And if this use becomes allowed in retail commercial and general commercial, then it's also allowed by default in mixed-use downtown commercial? No?
No, the retail commercial uses do not, no uses carry over to the downtown area. So it does not include downtown mixed-use commercial.
So if we approve this ordinance, it does not allow tattoo parlors downtown?
That's correct.
Yeah. Anybody want to weigh in on? Yes, sir. Come on up. No, speak up here. We got to. push the red button there. And have a seat.
My name is Zach Mueller.
There you go.
My name is Zach Mueller.
Good afternoon.
Awkward for me. I own a tattoo shop here in town. I've been in business in town for 23 years. I've been bound to light industrial or general industrial since day one. I've only been allowed in light industrial with a special use permit, which I've had to come in front of you guys 2 times. The first time I rented a building for the first 12 years in light industrial, corner of Fairview and Solomon. I had an opportunity to buy a building, but per zoning ordinance, I've been bound to light or general industrial. So I found a building, luckily for myself, in town. I'm on Corbett, across from Mills Park, 1 block. I've been in business there 11 years. I'm very active in my community, but I've been bound to light industrial. I've been tried to be on the highway 2 different times. Turned down both. I think it would be an unfair advantage for somebody to come in and be able to come in front of the board and apply for a zoning ordinance change, which I think that's what you guys are attempting here. When there's established business in town that we've been bound for at least the 23 years I've been in business, we've been bound to general or limited industrial. I too think that our industries should be allowed to be in other areas versus the way they may have been scrutinized in the past. We are definitely becoming far more mainstream. But if you open it to retail commercial, you almost open the same opportunity that happened in Reno in Midtown. There's a tattoo shop on every corner. I don't know that Carson City is prepared for that. I don't know the person who's applying for this. It's no animosities toward him. This is strictly business. I don't think it's fair to those that have been established, that have been doing what we do in this town and pushed out of being able to be in the limelight, to now let somebody be out on the highway. It's just an unfair advantage. With that said, I do know a young lady that applied through zoning to be in the exact location this person is in the past. And if it's not his unit, it's the unit to one side or the other of him, but it's in the same building that this person's in. And she was given a business license to do permanent cosmetics in that location. And then I went into zoning because I tried to lease the very same spot to conduct business in when I ended up buying my building. I was turned down from zoning to tattoo in that spot, and she got it approved, and then zoning went in and revoked her license after I questioned zoning. Again, this isn't an animosity toward anybody. It's just business, but I think approving that would give him an unfair advantage in a retail commercial, which would then allow anybody to open up in retail commercial tattooing.
I get that from the competition side of things, what you're saying. How about from just a community development side of things? I mean,
I'm not against it, but I've tried for years to be on the main highway, and our industry's been scrutinized, and I think we should be allowed to be in mainstream society. We work hard. TV has proven that a little bit. Our industry's grown. Our industry is getting stronger. I purchased a building because we were bound. So it's not going to give me the same opportunity it would give somebody who rents a space just to go out and open in retail commercial, which I would love to. I think it should be thoroughly discussed amongst the board, hearing it from all sides. I don't think it's a bad thing to allow our industry to be in mainstream and out on the main highway, in essence, is what I'm saying. I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that you will be giving somebody an unfair advantage. And
How would you suggest, I mean, I get where you're going, I think I do, but, so you would say we do not permit this zoning change then?
I was bound by stuff when I got into the light industrial was I couldn't be near residential. There was limited setbacks. Couldn't be near schools, residential. And I know that this unit is across from apartments. Again, it's not against the person. This is against
the person. I don't know the person or the business you're talking about. I'm just trying to figure out, I get where you, as I said before, I get where you're coming from a competitive standpoint.
Right.
And also the fact, that you're in there and you've made a substantial investment in one area. But I'm not so certain I can, in my mind, if I can make a judgment call on a zoning by competition between locations in town, whereas I would like to be able to make a judgment call based upon whether or not tattoo parlors fit in a certain area of town or they don't. Without.
It's already been, has it not already been deemed, though, that they didn't fit into a commercial zoning? And it's been approved in other towns, and then they bite themselves or step on their own feet and are trying to push them back out of the same areas that they've been allowed them into. I would love for you guys to allow us to be on the main highway. I'd be the first to rent a unit directly across the street from the state capitol.
Yeah, well, that can't happen under this, because that's under a different zoning ordinance.
But I could move a block down to where King Autos is and open up out on the highway. Retail, commercial. And then
Okay. That's a fascinating discussion. All right. What did the Planning Commission say about all this?
There was no public comment beyond the applicant at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission in their dialogue discussed, and similar to what you're hearing right now, is the evolution of the industry, the fact that it's a healthier industry, that the risk of, I don't know how to put it, but dirty needles, I guess you would say. It's okay. That's not a concern anymore, given how the industry operates, and that it is indeed a mainstream industry, and there's no reason to banish it to industrial areas. Is my summary.
Hang on a minute, Brad. I got John down here just a second. John, go ahead, and then Brad.
Yeah, just a question, a philosophical question. This goes to the right of citizens to petition their government for a redress of what they might consider their grievance. You've been before the Planning Commission, I assume, from what you've told us, and tried to get on a better, what you thought of as a better location commercially. But you never proposed that the ordinance get changed, I assume?
in front of zoning.
Well, planning, which is zoning.
For a zoning. I've not applied for a zoning ordinance change for tattooing to be allowed in, no, sir.
But you did go and talk to somebody, and they said, well, you can't go here, you got to go there, is what you're telling us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is just another citizen who's come and said, I would like you to change the ordinance so I can put a business in another location. And you say yourself, if you could be on the highway, you probably would take that action. So I'm a little confused. You just say, I've already invested in one location because that's where I was told the only place I could go, right? Is that what your experience was?
My experience was we could only be in general industrial with no contingencies. Mm-hmm. We could be in light or limited industrial strictly by special use permit. Mm-hmm. And I have come in front of you guys twice for special use permit to be in the locations I've been in.
Okay. Gotcha.
I've made 2 offers to purchase buildings on the highway contingent to being approved.
And then didn't get approved.
And I got denied on both.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. I understand your concern. It's just that I don't want to shut off. I don't know how I'll vote on this yet. I'm still listening to everything, but it seems to me they do have the right to come in and ask, can you change the ordinance?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
At the Planning Commission level or at the staff level, was there any discussion about this being an allowed use only with a special use permit instead of a primary permitted use?
No, because we were equating it to the body piercing, and that's an allowed use, and we felt the two were equivalent.
I think that there's probably a timing difference, like a body piercing takes a minute or a few minutes, where tattooing can be multiple hours per session. And if you have storefront windows, there's a visibility issue that I think is separate. Regardless of that, though, my bigger concern is what Mr. Mueller was talking about, which was the potential for having a tattoo parlor on every corner. And so I would prefer that if this board's direction is to approve this, and I'm not sure that it is at this point, that we have the ability to control the use more than just having it be a primary use.
I would have a tendency to agree with that thought process. I think the fact that Mr. Mueller had to go through a special use permit process and pay the fees and jump through all the hoops, that this should be no different with regards to, I mean, is it appropriate for a particular area? I think it has to be looked at one-on-one.
You mean case by case, right? Yeah.
Well, and then my other concern is that I really want to look at Title 18 in its entirety, that's a project that I'm really after, instead of piecemealing changes to Title 18 that we seem to be doing a lot of lately, these little one-offs or single cases too. So I hate to just open this up as just a permitted use without us having an opportunity to do all the other Title 18 work for all the other inconsistencies that you may be absolutely correct about. Permanent makeup, body piercing, I think all of these issues need to be looked at, assessed for fairness and equity throughout the code. So I could live with not permitted, but they have to have a special use permit. A conditional use, I guess is what we call it.
Then do we have to go back through planning and ask them to think about that, or how do we work this?
Well, I'm not so certain we shouldn't send it back and ask them what did they talk about conditional versus permitted?
No, there was no.
Go ahead.
She was talking there, so I'll take that. I don't recall there was any discussion about changing it. Was there any discussion at the Planning Commission about making it a conditional use? I don't recall any. They didn't have any discussion about that. It was focused on the ordinance as the application as presented to make it a permitted use, and the discussion was focused on that.
And we prepared did our planning staff prepare the ordinance?
No.
We did.
The staff prepared it, but this was an application. Staff is not bringing this application before you. The applicant's in the audience, Jason Meindl.
Okay.
I don't know if he'll be addressing the board.
I think we ought to take we'll do what the board wants to do, but I think we ought to take a motion to refer it back to the Planning Commission to give us their thoughts on whether this should be a primary permitted use or a conditional use.
Yeah, I think before you do that, you should let the applicant represent himself to you on this. I don't think procedurally this needs to go back to the Planning Commission on
Okay.
first reading. But
Let's hear what the
if you want
applicant has to say. Okay. Yes, sir. Come on up. Good afternoon. How you doing? Okay. This is the process. This is the process. Not easy process. It's not easy process to amend an ordinance, but tell us why you want to do it and what's going on here.
Okay, I would like to begin with saying I don't feel I'm taking any special circumstances, because as far as I know, I'm the first person that's actually taken the initiative to start this application to get tattoos reclassified. Anyone could have done that prior to me. When I first came to the zoning, I was told the same thing. I had my business licenses all lined up, I had my insurance drawn up, everything was ready to go, and then you're not zoned. And then I was told there's no way you can go ahead and change that. So then I went ahead and found out what steps would we take to change the zoning to where it could work. Because really, other than it's labeled industrial and I'm retail commercial, there's no reason why it shouldn't. And my location actually isn't on the main strip. I'm one street back on California.
Sir, can you state your name for me?
Yes, my name is Jason Meindl.
I want to spell your last name.
It's
please.
MEINDL. NDL. And yeah, as it's been stated, body piercing is already retail commercial. It seems like everything but just outwardly calling it tattooing is already acceptable in a retail commercial. And as Zach even was mentioned, it's been so long, and it's been, the industry has moved so far forward, it should be retail commercial by all rights. In fact, most towns it already is. And then they labeled it industrial back in the 70s when people were making their own needles and their own machines. And it was like a biker subculture, and there was no industry to regulate the bloodborne pathogens and the health aspect. And that's just, that's all been greatly improved since then.
So if it's made a conditional use, that means you'd have to get a special use permit? What's that do to you?
Basically, I have all my funds tied up in my original application to push this forward. So for me, that would mean I would have to kind of cancel the business I have going now, reorganize, and then in a few years, maybe try and find an industrial location.
No, if you were able to, if instead of making this a permitted, primary permitted use, it's conditional upon you getting a special use permit, so that it would, either the planning commission or this body could have a say on where these things, where the tattoo parlors go in retail commercial.
Oh, that would be fine with me. My location's perfectly suited for it, and all my neighbors are really behind me. They're all waiting for me to come back, hopefully with good news.
So, Hope, was there a fee that he paid to request a zoning change? And what is that fee versus a special use permit fee?
Yes, he paid a fee for the zoning change. It was more than $2,000, do you recall? $3,250. $3,250, and to get a special use permit's about $2,400.
So I would say potentially the sole issue we would have for this individual is to apply, would you let him apply his fees from the zoning request if we made it a special use so he didn't have to pay again? That's really the crux, but he would have to go back to the planning commission to ask for the special use permit.
Can I add to that?
That's the only issue.
Jason, the thought is just that we have a little more control over where things go, so that, as Brad had mentioned, we don't have a tattoo parlor on every corner, and as the other gentleman mentioned that as well. I don't want to just open the door, in other words.
Yeah, I completely understand that, and I'm behind that 100%. Actually, originally, I was trying to get a special use permit, and that was when I was told that that couldn't happen, and this was the way I had to go about it. And otherwise, that's what I would have done in the first place.
Well, you could have gotten a special use permit for a light industrial area.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had already signed my lease.
I understand that. I'm just saying that, I understand what you're saying, and it's a timing issue.
Right.
All right, what's going on over there?
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be helpful for staff, and I've heard from a number of commissioners, or supervisors, that you're looking for the special use permit, so there's more oversight, if you will, on the location and the appropriateness of the location. What may be helpful is to understand if the supervisors are thinking that there's certain separation requirements and certain type of uses you're seeking separation from. If the answer is no to that, that's fair. But if the answer is yes, we're looking for separation from schools, separation from similar uses, separations from parks, that would be helpful information, because another approach as an alternative to a special use permit may be to incorporate separation requirements if that was something that the board was interested in.
Well, I think that's a good reason to recommend this back to the Planning Commission to be able to look at all those different aspects of this. And what I'd like to see when it comes back is also a map of the retail and general commercial areas, so that we can see exactly where locations would be allowed and not allowed. I'm sorry, my granddaughter is peeking through the back window there. It's very distracting.
She wants to know if she can get a tattoo.
That's right.
Okay, well,
Did somebody answer Lori's question about whether this gentleman's application?
well, I think we can do that, but I think,
Just to be fair,
I mean, to be
fair to
fair,
the
I mean, I-
applicant, that's all.
the last thing we want to do is, run people around the, I mean, I get what's going on. The last thing we need to do is run people around the ringer who making a good faith application to change things. But I think we need to also do our due diligence up here. So I think it's going to work out for you. It's just a question of time.
Yeah.
All right. And I think, we'll make it right by you on the application fee. But I think what you're hearing up here is we'd really like it to be somewhat, some control over where these things go in the retail commercial area. And you know what, I think we all fully understand, that the tattoo industry is changing for the better. And so, it's something we need to address. And so I want to thank you for bringing this up. I mean, it's something we need to think about, but it also is something that, we probably need to think just a little bit more carefully about where things go. And I say we'll make it right by you, because I assume that where you are right now would otherwise qualify if you had distance requirements from schools and stuff like that. Is that right, Hope, or not?
I'd have to look at separation requirements, but having been to the site of Jason's Bazaar on California, it feels, I don't see where it would be a conflict in terms of compatibility with the neighborhood. But again, I think if what the board's asking us to do is bring it back to Planning Commission to solicit their input in terms of where the appropriate separations, if there are any, or if it's just an issue of a special use permit to look at neighborhood compatibility and so on, we can solicit that input.
All right. Well, I think that the Planning Commission probably did already. Keep in mind, we want to be as business friendly as we can, but we also want to make sure that we're doing the right thing by all of the community here. Okay. And I think also, if it goes down this road, which I suspect it will, I think people know that there's investment going on here, and that we kind of want to see, loosen up where those tattoo parlors can go. That this gentleman who's already applied for his application fee for the zoning change ought to be applied to a special use permit if that's where it ends up. Can we do that?
It's up to us, yes.
You can do that.
That's what we said.
If we say she can do it,
Yes,
she can do it.
yes.
As a city manager told me one time, is this something you want to see happen? Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to make them pay again.
All right.
Right.
Does that work with the rest of the board?
Yes.
Works for me.
All right, let's entertain a motion then on this record here. Somebody want to make a motion?
Sure. I move to refer this item back to the Planning Commission for further discussion about allowing the use as a conditional use with a special use permit, and to bring it back with the Planning Commission's recommendations and maps showing the appropriate zoning districts.
Do we want to add in that this individual applicant's fees would be applied to a special use permit? Because I don't think she has the authority unless we do it.
Is that an administrative matter, or can? you
We need to
direction?
do it.
Okay, so then as part of that motion, then, I would direct staff to apply the application fee for the zoning change to the special use permit.
All right, everybody clear on the motion?
Yes.
Hope and Lee, you clear? All right, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, carried. Thank you both of you for very excellent testimony today. These things work out. They'll get them. As an old law school friend of mine, professor told me, it all comes out in the wash if you've got a good enough washing machine. All right. All right. Let's take up 22 Bravo. This is on second reading for fictitious name changes, or applications, rather. Everybody had a chance to look at this one? Any public comments on second reading? Changes since first reading? Anybody? Anybody weigh in? Motion's in order to approve on second reading.
The ordinance number?
2017-27.
Okay. I move to adopt Bill number 129 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-27, an ordinance amending Title IV, Licenses and Business Regulations, as published on the agenda.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Let's do 22 Charlie. This is second reading as well to adopt Bill number 130 with respect to the definition of dwelling, single-family, and single-family dwelling, and other related matters consistent with state law. This is on second reading. Anybody want to weigh in on second reading? Hearing none. Board members, motions in order on second reading.
I move to adopt Bill number 131 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-28. And
You said 131, is it 130?
It's 130, bill number 130. What does yours say?
Is this reasonable accommodation? Or am I on the wrong
No,
one?
that's the wrong one.
Single-family.
It's dwelling, single family.
I don't
You
have
have that
that
one?
one, yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
I move to adopt Bill number 130 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-28, an ordinance amending Title 18 of the Carson City Municipal Code to revise the definition of the terms dwelling, single-family, and single-family dwelling, and other related terms for consistency with state law.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. We'll take up reasonable accommodation. This is
Now this is yours.
22 Delta. Second reading, anybody want to weigh in? Any members of the public? Any changes that we know of? Hope?
The board, when you introduced this, added language to number 2 that called out the appeal that the director's decision can be appealed in accordance with CCMC 1802-060. So that language is in the ordinance
It's on-
per
it's
your
in there.
request.
Okay. Okay, motion's in order. Supervisor Brankowski.
Okay, I move to adopt Bill number 131 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-29, an ordinance amending Title 18 zoning, Chapter 18.02 administrative provisions to add Section 18.02.130 reasonable accommodation.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Let's do 22 Echo, another one on second reading. This is with respect to private use wind energy conversion systems. Any changes from the public from first reading? Anybody, member of the public, want to weigh in on second reading? Motion's in order on second reading.
I move to adopt Bill number 132 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-30, an ordinance amending Title 18 of the Carson City Municipal Code to remove the maximum height limitation on private use wind energy conversion systems, to establish certain review standards relating to the issuance of a special use permit for such systems.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much, planning folks. All right, let's take up concluding public comment under the Board of Supervisors. Any concluding public comment? Anybody? I don't see any, so then we're going to, unless there's an objection, we will adjourn as the Board of Supervisors, take a 5 or 6 minute recess, and then I'm going to turn the gavel over to the Chair of Redevelopment, who's the Mayor Pro Tem, Supervisor Abel.
I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Redevelopment Authority and let the record reflect that we have a quorum. And I'll be the first one to disclose. We have some other disclosures as well. Pursuant to NRS 279.454 and Section 1.4 of the Carson City Redevelopment Authority's Policies and Procedures, I'm required to submit a written disclosure to the clerk for the record if I have any direct or indirect financial interest in property located in the downtown or South Carson Street redevelopment areas. I have a direct financial interest in the business known as Cafe at Adele's, located in the downtown redevelopment area. I have submitted my written disclosure to the clerk as required, and I will be participating and voting on this matter.
Next. Pursuant to NRS 279.454 and Section 1.4 of the Carson City Redevelopment Authority's Policies and Procedures, I am required to submit a written disclosure to the clerk for the record if I have any direct or indirect financial interest in property located in the downtown or South Carson Street redevelopment areas. I have an indirect interest in 1000 North Division through Andy Wilson and Cheryl Evans, my two business partners in NAI Alliance Carson City. I have submitted my written disclosure to the clerk, and I will be participating and voting on this matter.
I have one too. Pursuant to NRS 279.454, Sections 1.4 of the Carson City Redevelopment Authority's Policies and Procedures, I'm required to submit a written disclosure to the clerk for the record if I have any direct or indirect financial interest in property located in the downtown or South Carson Street redevelopment area. I am a shareholder in Crowell Enterprises with my brother, which owns a building at 108 West Telegraph. My brother manages the property. I've submitted my written disclosure to the clerk as required, and we'll be participating and voting on this matter.
Any other disclosures?
Not unless you go over to Highland.
All right, thank you. On to item number 26, public comment. Is there any public comment at this point in time? Seeing none, item 27 for possible action, approval of the minutes of December 7th, 2017. Has everyone had a chance to read those? Motion?
I move to approve the minutes of December 7, 2017.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, on to item number 28, for possible action to provide direction to staff regarding redevelopment plans and activities, including the role of the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee in the review of redevelopment plans and incentives. And Lee, are you going to take us through this?
I will. Good afternoon, Lee Plumwell, Community Development Director. So the reason this is on the agenda goes back to in June of 2017, the Board of Supervisors assigned an objective for the city manager to provide a redevelopment report to the board. So this is a general overview. I think the general purpose of this was to, and the presentation I'm going to go through is a very broad overview of redevelopment and what it does, but I think it's primarily an opportunity for the board to discuss amongst itself what the future of the present and future of redevelopment, as well as give possible direction to staff, and we can take action to bring items back if you have some specific things that you want us to work on. So my presentation, as I've said, it's included in the packet. I'll do this for the benefit of those here, anybody watching. Just a very high-level, brief overview, going through the little bit of background of the redevelopment department is how we got here, how redevelopment activities are funded, current redevelopment projects and programs, talk about the Citizens Committee's role in making recommendations on redevelopment items, and then from there we can have redevelopment questions and discussions. However, if through my presentation, as I have things up, and if you have a question on any particular item, feel free to jump in and ask. So up there on the screen we have two distinct redevelopment areas in Carson City, kind of jointly known as the redevelopment district. However, there are two distinct redevelopment plans. Redevelopment Area 1 is generally in the downtown area, referred to as the downtown redevelopment area. However, it also includes the Costco site to the south, which was added later. It was amended in later. And then in 2004, the Redevelopment Area 2 was added, which is basically from south of the Carson Mall, down the commercial corridor to the Douglas County line, except that it also includes the Kmart site at the north end of town, which was amended in as well. But so we have these 2 redevelopment areas, 2 redevelopment plans. Just a little bit of background on the redevelopment department. I wanted to note that in the early to mid 2000s, we had a redevelopment department that was staffed and just did redevelopment, and in fact, did full-time staff, and they did recruitment activities. As I mentioned, in 2004, the area numbers 2 was added, but as we got into the recession and available funds were dried up, so to speak, to do different activities in redevelopment, it was a city, as a policy, the city moved away from the recruitment functions and other of those types of active functions of redevelopment, and actually, as we had a retirement, that's when I got redevelopment for more of a budget management position, really, and procedural for the special event funding and things like that, and just to manage the budget. Between 2010 to 2012, we did have a business development library, and we had somebody, again, doing business development services for the community. But again, and then that was also phased out, and in recent years, we've shifted away from putting redevelopment funds into personnel and those types of activities in order to use for the various projects and programs that I'll go into a little bit here shortly.
Lee, let me ask you a question. I was just looking closer at the map. I own property at 510 West 4th Street. Is that also?
Yeah, looking at, this is just a general, not the detailed maps are in there. So the redevelopment district goes, if you're thinking about the downtown area.
Thompson, we are.
Well, let's see, you said 4th Street, Mayor?
I think I need to amend my disclosure.
It only goes, so south of 5th Street, it goes to the west only over to Nevada Street.
How about north of 5th?
And then north of 5th Street, it goes over to about Mountain Street. And it goes all the way to Roop Street to the east, but includes some of it goes farther east, including Mills Park and the properties across the street there. It goes north to past
I'm just worried about the 510 West 4th Street.
Yeah.
I need to amend the filing with the clerk to reference 510 West 4th Street. And I need to amend my disclosure if anybody has any questions about that. So I'm a third owner in 510 West 4th Street as well, which I believe is in the redevelopment area.
Better safe than sorry.
Mayor, we'll amend the written one submitted to the secretary.
Thank you.
For the
10 West
clerk.
4th Street.
Do I have to restate my disclosure?
No.
All right.
It's
so
on the
everybody
record.
knows.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay.
We're in the historic district on 510, but I didn't forget we're on the redevelopment district too. Okay.
Yeah, and so just a brief graph for those wondering how redevelopment works. It's not, the property owners are not taxed an additional amount on their property assessment, but what funds redevelopment is as property values go up over the years, that increment is the tax increment that goes into the redevelopment fund. So at the start of a redevelopment area, which for redevelopment area 1 was in 1986 and for redevelopment area number 2 was in 2004, at the start there's a fixed base of assessment which continues to go to the various assessment districts throughout time, throughout the duration as it had before, which includes the schools and other taxing agencies. The additional taxes the additional increase in the value and collected property taxes goes to redevelopment. And at the end of those redevelopment terms, which for Area 1 is 2031 and for Area 2 is 2034, at those times, then the assessment is the same on the properties, but the full amount then gets distributed to the other taxing entities, including the general fund.
Lee, just for clarification on that, which method are we? Is it the cumulative value of the redevelopment area and then the tax goes, or is it property by property? So this individual one is less or more? Which method? So there's two schools of thought in the redevelopment, and so which are we using? The cumulative value to the redevelopment district, pretend was 10 million and now it's worth 12, so the tax on the 2 million, or is it property by property within the redevelopment?
It's parcel by parcel.
That's why I asked which way we were.
Okay. In your report is the 5-year projection that has 5-year projected revenues and expenditures based on the allocation plan that you review now every year that's recommended by RAC. And up there is just a list of those activities that are now funded by redevelopment, which includes special events, and grouped broadly in that also includes funding Nevada Day, the tree lighting event, street closures for the events, and epic rides for the last couple years and the next couple of years. The farmers market could fall under that special events, but that's a little bit different. It's under contract to operate the farmers market. We have the facade improvement program that we've been having for a couple years now. I've reported on that before. We've had quite a bit of the funds used from last year. We've had some good one this year coming in and another one coming up soon. So that's still an ongoing program, and we'll do some outreach soon to make sure that the property owners know about that. We have downtown equipment and infrastructure purchases, which we've used, and there's just a little bit of ongoing funding for that. Utility extension program that hasn't been used, but we allocate some funding each year for that, and that would be for new development coming in if there's utilities that need to be extended. Then we get to more of the infrastructure projects. Downtown Curry Street and South Carson Street has been allocated some funding from redevelopment, as well as like with the prior downtown Carson Street and Plaza project. A couple of ongoing items that we've continued from last year, the blue line replacement, a little bit of funding for that is still in the works, and a Reimagine Art program, which we've carried forward the funds, and the Visitors Bureau, or called cultural, I forget what they're called now, but the CTA, the organization formerly known as the Visitors Bureau. And then we have ongoing payments and incentives for the auto dealers, which were started in that 2004 district. And then there's still some shopping center sales tax reimbursements that are out there from past incentives as well. And those items make up, plus these items, plus some of the staffing for management of it, as well as other downtown functions, make up the redevelopment budget, and that's where the funds go. So one of the questions that was asked, so I included in here, is actually the resolution that authorizes RAC's duties and what they do, and it's been amended over the years for some time. I talk a little bit about that in the staff report. As it's presently adopted, those 4 items up there are exactly what the resolution says that RAC does, and it's to make recommendations to the authority regarding redevelopment area plans. Those aren't amended very often. Those are included in there too. They're pretty broad in their objectives. We don't amend those very often. Incentive programs that we've talked about, we've been bringing the incentives to the RAC for recommendations, which is largely part of the allocation plan that they're making recommendations on. Special event funding, which they do annually, and other matters pertaining to the redevelopment district, which has been, for example, they've been allocated the facade improvement grant review authority to approve the facade improvement grants. And just to conclude my presentation before I'll open it up for questions, here's some upcoming activities for RAC and the meetings, and kind of these are annual, every year, the things we do in addition to the other things like the facade improvement applications that come up. But in February, when we go to RAC, that's when they make their recommendations on the allocation plan for the board's consideration. In March, to finalize the allocation plan for inclusion into the budget, particularly leading up to the FY19 budget. And then after that, the RAC meets quarterly, so their next regular meeting, their May meeting, is when they consider special event applications, and then in June, the Board of Supervisors reviews and approves the special event applications. So that concludes my presentation, and be happy to entertain questions at this point.
Who would like to go first?
I would love to go first.
Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Lee, somewhere in the back of my mind, I am remembering that there is a reason why we don't generally go in and clean up the language in the redevelopment plans themselves. Can you remind me what that is, or is there not one?
No, the last, not to my knowledge. I know we've had discussion over the years regarding area plans. Area 2 was the most recently amended one, and it came out of discussions. And looking back at the bottom at the approved date, that was back in 2012. So, for example, Area 2 was adopted specifically with policies in there that allowed incentives to car dealers, and that's pretty much all it allows. So there was discussion about expanding that. So in 2012, we went through the process and amended it to expand those items.
Yeah, and I'm looking specifically at redevelopment plan number 1 with number 304, 305, 307, develop a physical linkage and a approximate transportation mode amongst the V&T Roundhouse downtown of the Railroad Museum. That obviously is never going to happen. Promote the restoration of the V&T Roundhouse. That's never going to happen. Establish a unifying tree planting program throughout the redevelopment area. We have development standards that cover that now under our landscape standards, so that one's no longer applicable. So I wonder if it's just time to go through and clean up the language. In plan number 2, there's items that specifically talk about issues with the recession and high vacancy that are no longer applicable. So I'm wondering if we should go and clean up the language so that it's a little more broad and applies to both sides of an economic cycle, rather than putting such specifics in here that it doesn't apply.
Yeah, I think that's something we could do. That's up to the board to provide direction to go to. I think part of the discussions in the past and regarding, for example, those V&T references that aren't going to happen. So it's written to be broad. So just because they're in here doesn't mean you're going to do them, doesn't mean you have to do them, doesn't mean you have to fund these activities, but it's broad. So I think like with when we amended Area 2, it was to include additional things that you wanted to do. So you needed to amend Area 2 in order to do the activities that you wanted to be able to do. You don't necessarily need to amend 1 to not do activities you're not going to do, but if it's worth looking at to identify and probably, I would probably agree on some of them to clarify some of the objectives, especially as it relates to special events. I think we have, it could be written to be more clear about some of those things. So it's something we could look at.
Lee, just a thought that I had with regards to redevelopment objective number 324. Where rehabilitation of property may be unfeasible and where clearance and redevelopment may be necessary to eliminate blighting influences, cause such property to be cleared and redeveloped, and in the process assist and encourage the owners of such property to participate in these activities. I'm wondering if at this point in time, and I'll just use the downtown as an example, we have a lot across from the Hookah Lounge, and we also have the Jack's Bar facility, which we've heard from Mr. Drews on the state of that. It's almost going to the point of beyond repair. Should we be considering blighted property purchase assistance or redevelopment assistance specifically geared to those types of properties? And I'm just going to put that out there as a board consideration. And perhaps for the undesignated funds, this might be a direction that we go next.
And that's something I could bring, based on pending other direction from the authority today. I mean, that's something we could certainly bring up with the RAC for discussion to get it on that list in the allocation plan to do. Obviously, it's contingent upon available funding. You're not suggesting amending that one. I was gonna note that that's kind of one of those things that's NRS and just NRS allows a redevelopment authority to do. There's probably, though, a lot of other legislation, and Pistol comes to mind, about condemnation. I think you need to have willing participants in this case,
right.
But
No, but I think in the context of Jack's Bar, I mean, it's no secret that the Ormsby House is in negotiation right now, and hopefully we'll have a buyer. From the city's point of view, we've been pushing both the seller and the potential buyers to include Jack's Bar as part of that. Now, obviously, the problem with Jack's Bar is it's a historical building that needs to be torn down. So if the building were going to be rebuilt using the existing sandstone, whether or not you went in and shored it up, or whether you took it all down and marked every stone, rebuilt a building, and then kind of skinned it, so to speak, with the existing sandstone, there is no way that that is going to pencil out for an investor. I mean, you have a bar and you have whatever, 5 tables, 7 tables, whatever, however many tables are going to be in there. So some incentive like that, if the board is interested in or the redevelopment authority is interested in maintaining that as a viable business, or recreating it as a viable business, that type of incentive may be required. So
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And we really haven't had the wherewithal before this to really do anything. But I think now we're coming to that point where this could be a possibility and an incentive that's needed in order to make those properties viable. Any other? Lori?
So can I just clarify on the reimagined space for the public art? So you said it had carried forward, but I don't see it in the 2018 detail. So is that project is off the table? I'm looking at I show it says last year, but nothing in current year. So is that project not going to happen?
right, from that table, from the date of that, it was in last year's, but with the budget carry forward, if you look at the 5-year
It's not on
project,
attachment 5, but it's on 6?
on 6, it's been carried forward by finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I'd like to just talk about that project then. What's happened? Is it that we're doing so well that we ended up not having the vacant windows, which is a good problem to have?
No, they haven't started the project yet.
Do we anticipate that it's going to?
I'm talking to Mark Salinas. He was saying by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, okay. So I'd like to just say from another perspective then, in general, since we're talking about redevelopment, is it's hard for me to see us allocating dollars and then they're taking 2 years to get them expended, so.
Well, on that
because
one,
we have so many projects that can
that one was
fire, if
added
you wanna
late,
say.
though. So that one, I think that was, I don't think we ever had the illusion they were going to get it done right away and it wasn't going to carry forward into the next year. Now, whether or not it was June may be a different question, but it was towards the end of it was an add-on towards the end of the last fiscal year. It wasn't.
But I thought they already, I'm sorry, but I thought they already had identified windows, they had some samples
Yeah.
ready to go, so I'm just going to be blunt. When I was approving it, I was thinking, we're going to get some decorated windows here in the next month or two, so I'd like to see that we're very cautious or work with RAC to, again, make sure that the projects are ready to, shovel-ready, maybe that's the great word right out there, that I'd rather funding go to projects that are prepared to go, unless we're purposely saving the dollars over a long term that we know. So maybe one of the projects that we've been working on for a very long time, and certainly some redevelopment could be utilized on, is I'd really like to look at funding the community center seats, because we may not be able to use infrastructure dollars for a while on the community center project because we may need it for the streets. So this funding source is also available for the community center seats. And we have money in, I think, question 18 that's reserved for that. So I'd like to see that as a discussion item that you have with RAC to see where that priority could come from.
Yeah, I'd second that idea, although I like the Reimagine project when it came before RAC and our board, but there has been a long, slow slog to get there. If they're going to do it, it's really time to do it. We're back in pretty good shape. I'd like to go back to what Karen was talking about earlier, and I think it's a great idea if we can find a way to help out the problem with Jack's Bar. But I'm a great believer in waiting for the economy to let the apple fall from the tree. I know everybody in this town's tired of looking at that situation, but nevertheless, I think we need to wait and see what comes of the current due diligence on that whole property, because the same people own that property as the Ormsby House. I've brought up before, and we've discussed, certainly on RAC, and I think here too, the idea of expanding the facade program, if we can do it, to do downtown interior housing above things. A good example is the RAC, the Horseshoe Club. The guy's going to have housing above that, and I don't know how we would monitor it because it's called facade, and obviously if it's inside, it's private and it's not seen by the general public. But we really need to leverage our situation of downtown housing. We're getting a good start at it. It's going to come along, but if we could give it a nudge. So I'm not saying that those two things can't be done. I'm just saying my priority would be downtown housing, because if we wait long enough, Jack's Bar will fall down. And I'm not being facetious there. That's just true. Michael Drews is right.
Yeah, I think I would also favor looking at redevelopment funds for use at the community center. Yeah, because that was always the final priority from the infrastructure tax revenue. And I think it's pretty evident when we're talking about, how critical the Tiger Grant is, there's not going to be any money left over at the end of the day. On John's comments about, and maybe to Karen's comments too, about using incentive funds or redevelopment funds on individual properties, we used to do that and we were not successful at it, and we decided to stop doing that because maybe it was our fault in our monitoring, but the feeling was that we were picking winners and losers, and so I'm not sure that I'm on board with that. I think that people that own property kind of have an obligation to be able to financially afford that property, and if they can't, they should sell it, rather than look to the government for a handout to help them out.
Well, I think, just to respond to that, the problem came in offering incentives to people that were not actually property owners. Incentives were given to businesses, and then we had no guarantee and no fallback, and that's wherein the problem was. So this would pertain to property owners.
Yeah, well, I was a property owner that did get one of those incentives, and I can tell you it was just a rubber stamp process. Yeah. We would have to put a lot more oversight on it for me to be able to support it going forward. And I think that the Redevelopment Authority has, I thought, made it pretty clear that they wanted to use redevelopment funds for infrastructure and not as property incentives. So we would be reversing that after going down that road for the last 3 or 4 years. I would just caution us about changing horses in midstream.
I don't know that it necessarily would have to go away from infrastructure. It would be encouraging development on that property other than things that are blighted or vacant. So it could still be applied to infrastructure. We could still utilize it for that purpose, but try and incentivize somebody to do something with the property. I mean, it does us no good getting ready to fall down or being vacant and, a trash collector. So some of those properties need to be handled in a way that, hopefully incentivizes the property owners.
Brad's point, excuse me, you want to go? Okay, Brad's point is well taken. I don't like choosing winners and losers, but we do that with a facade program after a fashion, and the only difference I see there is that the public can see it. And you can't see if you do behind that facade something inside, but at the same time, downtown housing will do a lot for downtown. So if we can find a way, it doesn't have to be redevelopment. I just keep bringing it up because downtown housing is a real key. I've been writing about, I'm not a writer anymore, well I am, but it doesn't matter, but I've been writing about this for 25 years. And people used to tell me, use the words that the city manager used, which is, oh, this won't pencil out, this won't pencil out. 10 years later they were doing it, or 5 years later they were doing it. And it still wasn't penciling out the way they looked at it, but they got a little bit of a nudge for some help for government. And that's what they're looking for, let's be honest about it.
So really what you want to look at is for me, is the true blight. So it's not a property that may be even sellable whatsoever. So if you have a cost, and the Jack's Bar to me is a good example. If you've got a $40,000 or $50,000 disposal fee before you even can get started, more the incentives might be that kind of counts as a facade because that part is visible. So I kind of agree with Brad that I don't want to do development into the projects itself, but if I have a true blight and it's the elimination of the blight that maybe we could participate. So they don't have to sell the property, but it would be better for them to tear it down, which is a blight on the facade, and put in a garden for a while or something. So I think it really has to be a case-by-case basis, but not a broad. I'm with Brad that I don't want to just broadly open up and say we're going to start participating in.
And I know that some redevelopments actually dictate what they want to see on a property.
Right.
So there's that too.
Directed.
Well, since we're just doing wish list stuff here, I just want to add that Lori and Brad are talking about something I really care about, which is the community center seats and the whole project at some point. But those seats are just, I mean, it's a great theater sitting right next to us here, and it's. I pick my events to go. I'm doing personal now, but I think everybody says, I'll go to this because I really like that, but I don't want to sit there for 2.5 hours or 3 hours, and so they don't go to as many as they might. But at any rate, those two things are big on my wish list: getting downtown housing and community center seats.
And then can we talk about where is the process on the street where the Children's Museum, is that progressing, or do we see that as a project that can push out? You know, again, what I'm really looking for is that we're holding the thumb on it and making sure all the dollars are getting efficiently and effectively used when we have needs that are maybe out there in 22 or 23 that we could flip into 18 or 19 and push them if we're properly, because is there like 200,000 for that, or is there two streets there? I can't remember, so maybe it's 100,000 each?
Fiscal year 2020 is when the funding becomes available to do other side streets like the Children's Museum.
And is that still their priority? Because I know they've had a change in directors, and are they working with us on that plan, or?
As of how long ago?
Month? No.
I'll reach back out to them because that'll be on the list to talk about at the next. I have a packet of information, so I'll get back with them and make sure that's still a valid request.
Okay, because again, all I'm interested in is making sure we're doing the best we can with the dollars that we have.
Let me ask our community development director and city manager, are there other ways in redevelopment to do downtown housing help? Because it really is a lot more important than I'm even making it in my mind, I think. I could be wrong, but it really gives life to the downtown.
So on housing in particular, I think was it at the board retreat coming up, I think we plan on having an agenda item to give a presentation on housing, which will include the current zoning codes and the zoning code for downtown that allows housing. So we can go into that a little more. As we kind of think of even considering using redevelopment funds as an incentive, I would also reach out to our Nevada Rural Housing Authority and even the state housing to see if there's any, if that can be leveraged for any other programs that we could use it for. So instead of just having our own redevelopment incentive program, could reach out to see if there's any possibility of leveraging that for housing.
Well, you do understand, I'm not talking about a housing development of 5 units, 20 units, whatever. I'm talking about, I was just having a drink with Michael Robbins the other day from Hannafin's, and he said he just rents it, but his upstairs was a storage unit for him. I mean, there are downtown second floors that are just basically, in many cases, not many cases, but in sufficient number of cases, empty, that could be altered, which is what's going on at the the old Horseshoe Club now. That's what I'm talking about.
I understand that that's what you're talking about by the other examples. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and to answer your question, John, I think that the types of incentives that we can offer through community development are expedited permitting processes, parking incentives, density bonuses. There's a lot of things that we could do if we chose to, each of which has pros and cons. So I mean, we just take a comprehensive discussion about all these things, because you can go out and look in other jurisdictions and see where it's worked and where it's been a complete disaster. So again, I just don't know that we want to just paint with a broad brush stroke and say, let's do whatever we can to get housing downtown, because that may fail miserably.
Oh, no, I want good housing, and I understand what you're saying. So I'll look forward to that discussion at the retreat.
And then, Lee, maybe you already have it, that you'll have it on an agenda, but have we asked RAC in a more broad sense, anything that they think? Because I think sometimes maybe we pigeonhole them, like, okay, we set a policy up here to do something, and then we let them approve the projects that fit that need. So just potentially an agenda item to get their juices rolling as to what they think could be effective, efficient, priorities, anything, just to give us some information.
Right, and we do that annually as well. So at their meeting in November is when I have an agenda item at the last couple of years that we've been doing this, for them to start getting those ideas out there, that we then come back in February to make final recommendations on. So yes, we do have agenda items that have those brainstorming discussions that gives them the opportunity to add projects and programs to the list that they think they'd like to see or would be beneficial to the district.
The undesignated dollar. In reality, is that what I just want to be clear, what we're actually taking to RAC is the potential for the undesignated, but in fairness, again, if we're already purporting some ideas, that it gets communicated to the RAC, so they're not saying, go use it to, I don't know, put new tile roof somewhere, or do another side street that they recognize we're looking at the community center or housing. And so I think that sometimes is an issue between the Citizens Advisory Committee and the authority itself.
Sure, and I'm writing I write them down, and it's up to me to pass that information along so that they give it due consideration that these are ideas from the Board of Supervisors. And I think the spreadsheet's good because in that you see how much you have, and if you want to spend $200,000 but only have 100, what are you going to take it from? And you got to take it from somewhere else. And priorities could change over the years. It's a 5-year plan. It's you can't predict everything that's going to happen 2, 3, 5 years from now, but you know that if your priorities change, then you got to decide to shift the funding from one thing to another, possibly.
And then finally, I would add the redevelopment authority policies and procedures to documents that need to be updated. For instance, one example, section 1.8 meetings. If the authority has a couple of absences and one member needs to abstain, we can't conduct business because we can't reduce the quorum per the policies and procedures. So that may be in direct conflict with NRS. There's also another section where if we were to condemn a property and then rebuild it and then lease it out, that we would then require the tenant to pay the entire assessed value on the property. That doesn't address whether it's a multi-tenant property, so that language would need to be updated. There's references like that throughout the document, including on the investment policy. I don't think that the investment policy in this document matches what our city investment parameters are, so that would need to be cross-referenced to make sure that that's updated as well. So I just see a lot of things in here that just need to be refreshed and updated so that it meets our current practices, right? Sorry. I said I would, just to restate that, I said that I don't expect Lee to go through that document. I can redline it and send it to him, as well as probably other members of the board, to make it more efficient.
So, I mean, I'm looking over at Lee, but I think we've got quite a bit of guidance here, barring.
What do you think the guidance is on infrastructure or incentives?
So, Mr. Mayor, I would like the opportunity to come back to the Redevelopment Authority, and not to sound cryptic, but there are a couple of potential projects that are out there, and I would be remiss if we didn't fully explore them at the staff level and bring it back to both the Board of Supervisors and the Redevelopment Authority for your consideration. I'm not trying to be cryptic.
That's why I asked the question. I know we're talking about incentives and things like that, but but I can see on the horizon where an incentive might be the thing that's going to push something over the top to get done for the benefit of our community. And frankly, I think that's kind of one of the things that redevelopment's supposed to be doing. I mean, and so I'm a little concerned by saying we're not going to do any incentives anymore, if that's what you're taking out of this discussion up here.
Yeah, and I don't know if we took that from it. What I'd like to be able to do is come back to the Redevelopment Authority, because we clearly have a number of prominent, long distressed properties that I think the whole purpose of creating redevelopment authorities, one of them was to remove that blight. And I think there may be an opportunity for at least one of those in the very near future. So my recommendation to the Redevelopment Authority would to not put any type of a hard red line between any type of an infrastructure incentive.
All right.
That would be my recommendation to the authority.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what that means.
A case by case. One or two board members have opined that you don't want to provide incentives, and there's darn good reason for that. I would just make the recommendation not to provide that red line, and to view it on a case by case basis.
Pardon me for doing this, but my old hat comes on and I say, are you being cryptic because there's a reporter in the room, or just because it's not ready to drop?
It's not ready to drop.
And just to clarify, I obviously wasn't clear. I didn't say or mean to say that I oppose incentives. What I said was that before we do that, we need to have a comprehensive conversation about it, because I've seen it be both successful and be a failure depending on how it's constructed. And so I'm not willing to just go out and say, using a broad brush, and say, we're going to always provide an incentive in this situation. We always need to be able to have the ability to look at it on a case-by-case basis and make sure that we have some controls in place to be able to offer that incentive.
I think we all agree on that.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I think that's what we've been kind of been doing, but I agree with that. So, Lee, let me ask you this, as long as we're talking about blight and talking about redevelopment funds, would it be advisable to put the Tiger Drive area in redevelopment?
What was that?
To add Tiger Drive?
Yeah.
Yeah, to add. So I think it's hard to say off the top of, without exploring, without doing some research on any property. I think it's hard to just say it's would be a good idea or not to add something to redevelopment, because I think you look at the value of it, you look at what you can do with it, you look at the available funds, the duration of the redevelopment district remaining. So I think there's a lot of, that's a big question, because it's not just single properties that you could pick and look at, but, would it be valuable for other corridors, other portions of the city to be added or created? I'm dodging the question to answer.
No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but somewhere, I mean, that's one area where, you could see that maybe redevelopment, if you could give some redevelopment assistance, we could help a lot of those people out there. If done right.
Well, another thing you have to look at is what kind of assistance can you legally give with redevelopment, and would that assistance help change the area and increase property values, which is the goal. So.
Okay. Sorry I brought it up. I'm really not, but I do.
No. And it takes money away from the potential growth, would then take the money away from the school district. I mean, the other governmental entities don't get that growth factor in there either, so each thing.
No, but I think that we owe ourselves an obligation. I know that Supervisor Bonkowski's talked about expanding the redevelopment areas. And I think, I know that we take the increment away from school districts, but if there's a benefit to creating more economic value out of it that might even help the school district and along with the city, I'm not so certain we shouldn't be looking at that.
And since you brought up adding or subtracting properties from the redevelopment district, do you know why there's one parcel at the old Kmart property that's not included in the redevelopment district 2?
No, I noticed that. I don't.
It's the McDonald's
building. No, I wasn't in redevelopment at the time, so I don't know why that got excluded.
I thought I heard that when the original financing or something was done, couldn't have that on the parcel, or he couldn't have his financing. He couldn't be in a redevelopment district. The condition from the bank, anyway.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because it's a contributing factor to, there's an underlying document there that's basically a owners association where everybody has voting rights, but yet you have part of the property in the redevelopment district and part of it out of the redevelopment district, so they're not voting apples to apples. I mean, there's a lot of conflicts that are being created because of that, and I'm just wondering if you knew what the story was.
But I think the condition's gone anyway, so we could look to add it. The original condition that was the problem's gone.
Have any redevelopment funds been expended on North Carson Street, say, in that Kmart area?
No.
So what value do they or we or this community get out of them being in a redevelopment area?
Well, I think they were put in the redevelopment area for the ability for the city to help do anything. There were discussions a number of years ago when there was talk about a convention center and other things the studies and the feasibility studies, but nothing ever came forward to fruition to actually do any of those studies, and so no redevelopment funds were spent. So that's why it was put in there. It's probably just sitting there not doing anything. It's probably not a quote-unquote benefit to the redevelopment district being in the district, because it's not, I don't think it's improving other than just the assessed values may be creeping up just because they are everywhere, but it's not significantly increasing. That would be a benefit to the district.
It was added because Harrah's was looking at that site for a hotel and convention center. And so those incentive dollars would have been used to help bring that project together.
Any other input for Lee at this point?
What do we say about I know Brad mentioned, my mind was distracted for a minute, about downtown railroad tracks? I mean, Sam Flockus has been talking to us for a year now about getting rid of that provision that says you can't have wheeled tracks downtown.
That's a ordinance, isn't it? I don't think that's a redevelopment requirement. Isn't that somewhere in the Carson City Municipal Code?
Since you mentioned that here when we're going through that. Isn't it in here?
The roundhouse, that we can use the
Right.
money to,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So the money can be used say that again now, what the money can be used for?
Where was it?
For the restoration and rehabilitation of the V&T Roundhouse,
Right,
or
that's what
for
Brad talked about a minute
for intermodal transportation between the V&T Roundhouse, downtown, and the Railroad Museum.
So how does that fit with the fact that we have an ordinance that says you can't have railroad track down Curry Street?
A bus.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be railroad tracks. It could be bus, it could be horse-drawn carriage, it could be, whatever. But the fact is that the roundhouse doesn't exist anymore, so it's just not applicable.
It's moved.
Any other further direction? Lee, do you have enough to go back and think about?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have the ability to send us the policies and procedures and the plans as a Word document?
If you look at the plan area number 1, it was done on a typewriter, so no. But, I might have it in Word. Somebody may have retyped it for me. I don't think I.
do red line bullet points, but it's easier, obviously, if we have a Word document.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll see if I have
Sorry,
a Word
Kathy.
document to send you.
Thank you.
All right, is there any more public comment? Ronnie?
Thank you. For the record, Ronnie Hanneman. I have been on the Redevelopment Board or the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee, RAC, for, 4 or 5 years. I've been a member, a chairman, and termed out as chairman, and now I am the vice chair, I think. So it's been very interesting for me this afternoon to listen to you, because unless I'm watching, we don't get this kind of input. So I really don't know, as a committee member, what is really going on. I will tell you, one of the reason I'm here spending the afternoon is because there was supposed to be on the agenda some direction of what the RAC is supposed to be doing. I've heard nothing of that at the moment. So I think with our meeting in February, we really need to get down to the brass tacks of that. From what I'm hearing here, you're all over the board. I understand about your, wanting more people to live downtown. There's a lot of infill going on at the moment that's more on the east side of Carson Street than on the west side. So I don't know what area you're talking about. And there will be some, on the Telegraph Square area. There's just not a lot of, and I know the onesies and twosies that are coming, that you want filled, but I think that's a private sector kind of thing, not so much redevelopment. We're talking about and I will tell you, we were basically coerced, I think is probably a good term, of the windows improvement, the art improvement. That is not something that redevelopment really wanted to do, because we were asking at the particular time, and this was 8 months ago or whatever, is identify to us, please, what windows are empty. And there really were not a whole lot at the time, and they even went down to talk about filling the windows with art at the shopping center, which I know is in the redevelopment area, but that is being filled by that, and there's lots of, most of what you can see from Carson Street is filled anyway. So we really did not embrace that a lot, gave it begrudgingly the $10,000. And I agree with you, Mrs. Bagwell, that that $10,000 would be much better served to go to the community center. I was just over there for the Christmas show, and I'm tall, and I have to tell you, it's arduous sitting in there for 2 hours or 2.5 hours. I can't stand it. And I think that has been a long underserved, if you will, by redevelopment, that whole area. If you remember, redevelopment was very instrumental, and people forget. I guess I'm, like an elephant, I have a long memory, that the sign, the LED sign, came out of the redevelopment committee. So those are the kinds of things I think the external more than the internal is what is important. Up until about a year ago, I would say, RAC did not know its role. We would sit there and say, okay, what do you want us to do? We have maybe make some recommendations, however, it would come here and it wouldn't go through or whatever, so it was very frustrating. I have to tell you, we were very, very pleased when we had some authority, if you will, with the facade program, which was great. And it took some of the pressure off of you because we were the Citizens Committee and we didn't have to say, like you with the NRS, whatever it is, we didn't have to say all those things. And I feel that the committee at the time did a very good job. For those who came in front of us, we did turn some down, took that pressure off of you by saying it did not apply with what we had. So we felt pretty good about what we did. And we know we have some money left, but I think a lot of the major facades in the downtown core, which is what we were talking about, have been done. I recently saw, and we did put it in our plans for the future, that under phase 2 or whatever phase you call this, for the Curry Street, that the alley is going to be done, and some of that money has now been put over to Public Works for the alley to be done. The Redevelopment Citizens Committee, or RAC, did recommend 3rd Street to become McFadden Plaza, and I think that was a win-win. And whether and I think that really brings a lot more people downtown than 1 or 2 apartments. I also feel that redevelopment should look at the BAC. With what has happened for the past couple of years with the concerts, oh my gosh, that's pretty amazing what is happening down there. And for whatever reason, we've not really been able to look at that, and I think we should. It's part of the redevelopment zone, more so than where your office is, Bob, so that's even closer in, and that brings a lot of people in. What we as a RAC were told initially is basically to do things to help eliminate blight, and you've got the bigger picture, but we have the smaller picture, and that's part of the facade, to make the downtown attractive. So when Phase 1 or Carson Street came to being, that was pretty exciting to see the redevelopment, if you will, of the storefronts. I mean, it looks pretty darn good downtown right now. You mentioned, you can't have the whole city in redevelopment. In fact, I did was trying to do some research and to find out whether you can now downtown has had a lot of redevelopment monies over the years. Maybe it's time to take the downtown out of redevelopment and do something with North Carson. I feel that maybe you can't, with all the motels are up there, if you could somehow maybe make them look better, I don't know, that could be part of the redevelopment also, because that's pretty darn ugly up there, from College Parkway down to about Washington Street, not Washington, but William Street. Something needs to be done in that area, and I think that would be a good thing for redevelopment to consider in the future. I mentioned the LED lighting. Also, another underused facility that the RAC has recommended for improvement over the years has been the Fuji Park Fairgrounds. We've put up structures down there, and I think that's another thing, especially if we're going to do the fairs in the future. We need to do stuff down there. Those are the kinds of things that I think, the little pieces of the puzzle that make the whole. And I understand, Mrs. About we've got some blighted things like right very close, and it drives me nuts as well. But when you're talking $1.1 million or $1.2 million, that's a lot of money that we at the moment don't have because of our incentivizing the car dealers, which was a very good thing, by the way, and other major retail that has come into town. But I do think that the small steps that have been taken have made the picture more complete. So, but I think bottom line is the RAC committee should remain a viable committee. You haven't even really discussed that. And allow us to look at some things, because we look at stuff from the outside in, where you're looking, because I'm hearing here, you're looking at things from the inside out. So, and we're all over the city, and certainly can make recommendations. So anyway, that's what I've been waiting to say. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to entertain them.
Ronnie, just on the blighted property, yes, we only have a few, and no, we don't have a lot of money, but we didn't have a lot of money for the facade improvement program either, and look what that's produced. So the thought process is, can we finish something and move forward on some of these other things? I think your point about Fuji Park is well taken. The sound system is atrocious out there, and it makes it very hard to have any sort, and again, that's an infrastructure improvement that needs to be rectified. That's right, exactly. So things like that, I think, are hugely vital. The BAC is considering a remodel of the old church. Again, redevelopment could participate in infrastructure portion of that to help push that along. And I think all of these are viable, and I also see these as duties of the RAC to go through and jury and vet and all of that. I mean, as part of what we expect that they would do.
I appreciate that, because that is what we think we should be doing also, even though we meet only quarterly. It used to be we met every other month, but there was not enough agenda items. So meeting quarterly makes it much more, better use of our time. And I have to tell you, this particular committee that we have now is very dedicated. Everybody loves Carson City, and they want the best for it, and they want to dovetail into everything else that has been going on with Public Works and the whole bit. So, and you talk about, and I didn't even think to say this, you're talking about the sound system. Well, we just had, as you know, Silver and Snowflake. We have to bring our own sound system down there. That should have been something that would have been considered at the time, put in. But that also is something that could be considered. Again, those are small little puzzle pieces, but it's huge for the overall. And it will bring other venues into the downtown core, which will bring local people into the downtown core. On Saturdays, when we have the farmers market, which is funded through your body here, and any of the events, it's pretty amazing what is happening downtown because of one street closure. It's pretty amazing. And, I'm really proud of the city and proud of what's done, and I can't wait to see what Curry Street is going to be done. And I can't wait to see what's going to be done with the alley, because I see that as sort of an outdoor kind of drinking, eating place. So, but thank you for your comments.
Would like to comment too. First of all, I want to compliment you, Ronnie, because you've just mirrored us by being all over the block as well and covered a lot of things there. So we were all over the block. You're quite right. I think we were talking wish list here. I serve on the RAC committee, as you know, and you're right. Everyone is dedicated to this community. I, of course, would take exception to what you say about one or two apartments downtown, but that we can disagree agreeably about that. I think it's important, though, what Karen is saying about the one blighted one we've talked about here quite a bit. If we could change that by waving a magic wand, I would. I'm still waiting for the apple to fall off the tree, and I want to hear what happens with the Ormsby House, and I'm sure you do too. But thank you for your comments, and I think I feel the same as you, that sometimes I'm a little lost on the RAC committee because we could use a little better focus, but not as individuals, but as for direction from here, maybe. But everybody is doing what we think is best. But I tell you, I've lived in a lot of communities. I probably should never bring that up. And if you get downtown housing, and good downtown housing with good people in it, it really makes more of a difference than we've already made. And you're right, we've made a big difference.
Thank you. And you mentioned the Ormsby House. What a game changer that will be.
So I think I agree with John and Karen that the RAC committee is an important committee, and I think our expectation is that we need to rely on you to do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as vetting things, so that we don't have to spend hours up here doing it. And those are the recommendations that are most valuable to me. Then secondly, talking about equipment, it's some of the staging that the city has that we've had some complaints about. There's sound system, there's light system, soundboards. There's an endless list of equipment that needs to be upgraded or replaced. And, is that a good use of redevelopment dollars? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But we have to do something somewhere, so maybe that's a component of it. But we have to start taking some action. We've taken some good first steps, but if we're going to have some really top-notch outdoor venues, then we need to make sure that lighting and sound and everything else to make that experience enjoyable is also in place, and we haven't taken that step yet.
And I would just like to add one more comment, because I'm on the Fair Committee as well. And since we have decided to take that to a different level, and we have the nonprofits handling it, and they did a great job last year. I mean, in the end, I think they were minus by $700. That was pretty good, considering. And one of the things that they need are tents. That's a huge expense. So it may be that part of our infrastructure for Fuji Park is an investment in some tenting.
And that would probably be good, because Fuji Park, as the Parks Department will tell you, it's overloved, it's overused, and tents for the different, now that the trees are gone because they died and fell apart, that might be something good too. And I think those are the kinds of things. The biggest thing, Mr. Baunkowski, is the fact that it should be used within the redevelopment district, since we're RAC after all. And part of the, having sound systems for everybody, it's a bit of a problem because we are sort of confined, but I agree with you.
I was thinking specifically of the community center, the Brewery Arts Center, and Fuji Park.
Oh, 100%.
All three of which are in the redevelopment district.
Oh, 100%, because the sound system there is awful. And when we do Silver and Snowflakes and we hire a proper sound person, and you can hear the kids singing all over the city because they have a good sound system, that's pretty incredible, because I could hear both, so.
I would have one more comment, and I hesitated about saying this. Your point about the Brewery Arts Center is well taken. The Brewery Arts Center had a great concert series for the last couple of years. My wife is no longer on the Brewery Arts Center board. She was for several years. Now that she's off, I feel free to to make my views on this known, and I would have to say that I would be hard-pressed to do much for the Brewery Arts Center until they do an audit. I'm told they're considering doing one at this juncture, but it's a matter of I'll wait and see before I go there. They have to put up or forget it with me on funding anything over there until they've shown that they have their finances in order.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the internal operations of the BAC. I'm just looking at it from a universal point that I feel, we have some we have some diamonds in the rough, and I've always felt that the BAC is a diamond in the rough.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah, that whether it's managed or mismanaged is not something I know, but that's where I think the direction of the board, until such time as if you're talking about an audit, that we wouldn't consider something like that. So.
And I'm optimistic now that that's going to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so Lee, you have direction. The RAC has direction. I think we're good. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Everyone.